Welcome. My name is Tony Russell, and in this module I will be covering decision-making in new product planning. The topic of decision-making is clearly a robust area for discussion. For the purposes of this short module, I will be covering some basic concepts. I encourage you to review more in-depth materials related to decision-making processes and how to incorporate them into your organization. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely mine and do not represent those of my current or previous employers. For this module, I will be covering the following objectives. Review the types of decisions typically made in new product planning. Discuss the nature of information available to support decision-making in new product planning. Review the impact and context of decision-making in new product planning. And we'll review potential approaches to assist in new product planning decision-making. When we think of the challenge of making decisions, I believe we are all familiar with ineffective approaches. In these situations, we find ourselves in a seemingly endless loop of needing to make a decision, leading to the need for more information, and then reviewing the information only to find there is uncertainty, and then back to needing more information. The truth of the matter is that there will never be enough or complete information, and there will always be uncertainty. Our goal is to move to a model of more effective decision-making that includes identifying the decision, gathering information, identifying alternatives, weighing the evidence, choosing among alternatives, taking action, and reviewing the decision for any needed changes based on new emerging data. A large part of new product planning is centered around decision-making. This can include decisions related to program direction with questions such as which indications to pursue, how to prioritize additional indications, and what endpoints should be included in a Phase 3 study. We also have to grapple with decisions related to market sizing with questions such as how many diagnosed and treated patients exist, what is our share likely to be, and which of the target product profile attributes are the most critical. Decisions related to the competition are not uncommon, with questions including what is the impact of a competitor with a similar mechanism of action entering the market, and what should we do if the competitor ahead of us is successful. And another common area for decision-making relates to market access with questions such as how to think of pricing in the early stages of development, and predicting if payers will cover our therapy 5 years into the future. Clearly, there are other decisions that new product planning needs to manage, but this slide provides a highlight on the common ones. To provide some context, there are decision areas that are unique to new product planning compared to inline marketing. For new product planning, these can include indication prioritization and sequencing, lifecycle evaluation and prioritization, market sizing, competitive positioning, US and ex-US strategies, and building the overall value proposition. I have also listed some areas that are typically handled by inline marketing for reference. Not surprisingly, there are decision areas that are sometimes common between the functions and can include understanding prescription trends, understanding market access and coverage as well as pricing, defining disease state education, developing counter-competitor messaging, defining brand positioning, and considering beyond-the-pill strategies. In the case of the common decision areas, each function may address these issues at different times in the drug development cycle. Obviously, the decisions we need to make in new product planning need to be based on data and information. But it is important to acknowledge the limitations inherent in the information we typically use. This table provides examples of the types of limitations in the information and data sources we commonly rely on for our decisions. This is not to say the information is flawed and should not be used, but rather to exemplify the concept that there is no perfect data source, and we must get comfortable with uncertainty. As we think about decision-making in new product planning, it can be helpful to think about the context of the decisions. A good place to start is the strategic perspective of the program. I have listed some common contextual strategy questions and examples here for your consideration. Asking about the relative impact of the decision can be helpful. The examples shown here may have different impacts to the organization. It is also helpful to consider the assessment of the relative risks. For example, has the mechanism of action been validated? There is also the risk of not making a decision, especially in rapidly evolving therapeutic areas. Asking about the right level of information needed is critical since it can be easy to over-engineer and over-invest in situations where it is not warranted. An early-stage asset may not require the same degree of information as a late-stage asset. Another question to ask is, what is the guiding corporate objective or strategy? Depending on the answer, the decision could be heavily influenced in one direction over another. Common decisions that need to be made in new product planning include prioritizing and selecting indications and developing lifecycle management strategies. I refer you to the 2 modules that address each of these topics, and you can find the links in the description of this specific video. Given the uncertain nature of the information we have access to in new product planning, scenario planning can be a helpful exercise to work through with your team. One exercise that can help is to map out key assumptions and work through the different possible scenarios depending on if the assumption is true or not. A related exercise is to work through critical questions and potential scenarios along with recommended actions. The goal with these exercises is not to predict a singular scenario, but to think through the possible options and how emerging information can influence the probability of one scenario over another. For those interested in learning more, I would encourage you to learn about strategic foresight and how to anticipate strategic inflection points. I have provided a link to a reference in the video notes for those looking for more information. Another element in decision-making is governance structure and who makes decisions in your organization. For example, product teams tend to be cross-functional with clear objectives and processes. Product teams may be empowered to make certain decisions at their level, and in cases where decisions need to be elevated, the team is responsible for providing recommendations with supporting documentation. The next level of governance may include a leadership council comprised of functional heads. In small to mid-sized organizations, this council may even be the executive team. The leadership council provides relevant feedback to the product teams and final decisions as needed. And in the case where large decisions are needed that may require substantial investments or may entail significant risks, decisions may go to the CEO or even the board of directors. The topic of organizational governance is a complicated one, and this slide just scratches the surface. What is important to consider is the work needed to develop and define the organizational decision-making process. As we wrap up this module about decision-making in new product planning, one of the key learnings is that there will never be enough information. There will always be a desire to try and obtain more information, but this desire needs to be balanced with making timely decisions. And we have to acknowledge that the available information will have imperfections. In decision-making, it is important to work across different functions using an agreed-upon approach, as this will help to avoid the challenges of making a decision in a silo. Even with the limitations of available information, the discussions and debates that are a natural part of the evaluation process are valuable and provide key insights for the team. And lastly, have the agility and discipline to revisit assumptions and scenarios as new information becomes available. I hope you found this module helpful. Please feel free to contact me via LinkedIn if you have any questions or feedback. And be sure to visit the new product planning website for additional resources. Thank you.